G'day groovers, rockers, and in between. This is Vinyl Vibes. I'm your host, Jack Hodgins. Today, we are talking with drummer of Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs, Gil Matthews. After being in various bands in the 1960s, in early 1970 he became the in-house producer and engineer at independent record label Havoc Records. Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs were signed to the label, and in 1971 they came into Havoc Studios to record their song, The Dawn Song. After working on this song with the Aztecs, Gil would become the band's drummer. As well as being the drummer, he would go on to produce the band's hit, Most People I Know Think I'm Crazy, and their 1974 album, More Arse Then Class. After the Aztecs and various other bands he was in throughout the years, Gil founded Aztec Records, which reissues great Australian music from the 70s. G'day Gil, and welcome to Vinyl Vibes.
Hi Jack, how are you?
Pretty good, and thanks for making the time to be on the show today. And look, I just wanted to start off in the beginning, Gil. I've heard you're born in Melbourne in 1947 in Melbourne.
Yep.
Yeah, what do you remember of your childhood growing up in Melbourne?
Well, I grew up in Baldwin. Started to learn drum music when I was 5, and then I toured America when I was 11 with Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa. I tried to explain to someone the other day that when I was 8 years old, playing downbeat concerts at Melbourne Town Hall, people used to not really clap. They stamped their feet on the floor, and being a wooden floor, there's this incredible noise going on of people stamping their feet, and they'd be yelling, "We want more." So it was a completely different thing than what goes on now, you know. And it was was an era, and it was a strange era where the drummers were the pop stars. The singers weren't the pop stars, and the guitar players weren't the pop stars. The drummers were actually the pop stars. Everyone came to see the drummers, you know. I think rock and roll put the singers and the guitar players up the front.
Yeah.
Whereas before that, when you had big bands like Benny Goodman, people would go and see Gene Krupa, the drummer, more than Benny Goodman.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich and a couple of, you know, there are a few others. I can't think of their names at the moment. Oh, Louis Bellson. Louis Bellson played with Duke Ellington. People went along to see the drummers, you know. Lionel Hampton was a vibraphone player, but he's also a drummer as well. You got to realise, up till then, kids were sort of more or less listening to what their parents were listening to, which was jazz. I mean, my parents listened to Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller and Count Basie and Duke Ellington and all that sort of stuff. And then Elvis Presley came along and just changed everything, really. You know, changed the whole structure of what music, you know, to what music is today, more or less. Because, you know, before him and before rock and roll, it was jazz. I grew up with jazz. I grew up playing jazz. Rock and roll didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I predate rock and roll. Went to school with Gary Young from Daddy Cool, Wayne Duncan from Daddy Cool, Roger Treble from Bobby and Laurie. Roger played guitar on Hitchhiker, one of the big hits. And we had our first sort of band when we were about 15 probably, 15 or 16.
That's when the Shadows were kind of starting to happen when you were 16. I mean, and I know they had a big impact on you, and it kind of got me thinking, and as they had a big impact on a lot of people of your generation, and I was kind of thinking, why do you think they had such a big impact?
Well, they had a big impact on all of us that went to school together. You know, there was this group of kids, as I mentioned, Gary Young and Wayne Duncan and Roger Treble, and I mean, Hank Marvin and the Shadows with Cliff Richard, just, you know, they came on the scene and everyone wanted to play guitar, including me. So that's where I took up guitar, because before that I was a drummer. So I took up playing guitar probably late 15-year-old, early 16 in my life, and played guitar for the next 5 years maybe, something like that. And then went back to drums when I joined Levi Smith's Clefs. I was with them for about 2 years, and I went back to guitar again with a band called the John Rupert Group, which was John Perry, the lead singer from the Vibrants. He left the Vibrants to put a band together, and I played guitar in that band, you know, for a while. So drums and guitar. Then I joined up with a guy called Grant Lee D, who was a blind DJ. Had a big hit called Let the Little Girl Dance. He was a DJ on 3AK. And I sort of swapped between drums and guitar with that band for about 2 years. And then got involved in studio stuff, recording bands, production, writing jingles, you know, studio stuff, engineering the studio. And by the time I got to March 1971, I joined the Aztecs, and I guess the rest is history, you know.
When did the Aztecs discover you? Because they saw you playing with Grant Lee D, am I right on that?
Yeah, Preston Town Hall. That would have been about 1970, sometime, 1970. By then, I was playing with Grantly D, and I was just starting off recording in studio and being an engineer and producer and doing, jingles and writing sort of string and brass parts for jingles and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, basically, I started pretty young with all this stuff.
When did you start at Havoc Records? Was that when you played Preston Town Hall when they discovered you, or when did you start there? Yeah.
I started at Havoc Records around about early 1970, and I produced and engineered all the early singles that Havoc had, which was Lobby Lloyd and the Wild Cherries was one of the singles we did. Carson was another one, a track called Travelling South. There was a band with Derek Felici in as the drummer, who later on went to play with the Little River Band. There's a band called Chook, another band called Ash. We did a couple of albums as well. So I'd already been probably recording, engineering, because I was the house engineer producer by now, and the Aztecs signed to Havoc Records, the label, and came in and recorded a single called The Dawn Song.
Yeah.
Which the single before most people know Think I'm Crazy, So, and Havoc Studios equipment was pretty archaic compared with Armstrong's or TCS, but we still managed to get stuff done and get stuff out. And what I used to do is I used to record the bands. We had one of Australia's earliest 8-track machines, so I used to record the bands on 8-track and then transfer it take the tapes into Armstrong's or TCS studios, which were the back of Channel 9, where Mad Lake recorded and lots of other bands recorded, and dump them onto the 16-track and then add more stuff to it and mix it at TCS, and that was basically what we did, because we didn't really have great mixing facilities at Havoc Studios, which were called Studio 31. It didn't have a lot of, the equipment's pretty real basic stuff, compared with what Armstrong's and TCS had, But I was there for about a year when they signed the Aztecs to do this, the Dawn Song, which, the first thing we did was hire a 8-foot Steinway piano for Warren Morgan to play, and we couldn't get it in the studio. It was too big.
Oh, right.
So we had to actually play in the foyer, and Havoc Studios are close to the train stations. You can actually, if you listen really close, you can actually hear some of the rumblings of the trains when the track starts. So it was pretty sort of, to me, it was like, well, these guys are pretty weird. This is pretty bizarre stuff. And then and I joined this band that basically was pretty bizarre for the next 35 years. Still, we put it out, and I never really liked the Dawn Song, to tell you the truth, but a lot of people do like it. And it was a song that was basically half written by Warren Morgan and half written by Billy, and they had these two songs, and they didn't know what to do with them, so they basically joined them together and made one song. So the first half is Warren Morgan's version of it, and the second half is Billy's version of it. And we just made one total song out of it,
I was listening to the Dawn Song quite closely, because I know you worked, you produced it, and you mentioned that piano, and at the beginning of that song, you got that effect, like when the piano starts, you got that effect on the piano. I'm not sure how to describe it, but I think you know what I mean. Like at the start, there's like that, you have the piano, and then you got like what sounds like you've tracked the piano twice and you've reversed it, like on the second track. Am I right at all in that? At all, Look, it was an era. It was an era of me experimenting. I used to go home and listen to all that great English stuff that was being done around that time. King Crimson, and Yes, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and all that weird krautrock sort of German stuff, and always looking for ways to produce things and add little quirky things to tracks and stuff. I think the classic really was I Am the Sea by the Wild Cherries, Lobby and the Wild Cherries. That's got a lot of myself experimenting with stuff. The beginning thing, which sounds like some sort of harp, is actually me playing a chord on a piano and then running a guitar plectrum across the strings of the piano to get that sound. So just weird things, just experimentation, trying to make things unusual, trying to make them different.
You know, it was that sort of era where you could do lots of things, and most of the times you're happy if they come out well. You know, and you know, also these are the days of when they had the Mellotron and all those weird electrical keyboard type things that you never hear of one now. But I used the Mellotron at Armstrong's when I did Colour Balls album Heavy Metal Kid. You know, a Mellotron is used by Yes in England and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and everyone. You know, it was quite a weird and wonderful piece of equipment, but very difficult to keep going, very difficult to move around, you know, all that sort of stuff. But it was that era.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned with the Dawn song that it was like two songs kind of put together, and I think it's about 1:30 when that second part of the song, second song in the song starts. And I was kind of thinking, like, when you guys did that, was that a tape splice you used to get it, like, to do that? Because, I mean, it kind of... No, okay. Like, was that live? Yeah.
Yeah, it was all done together. Yeah, well, I mean, the vocals were done as overdubs and some of the guitar stuff, but no, it was all done. We didn't have click tracks. We didn't have any of that stuff in those days. And, you know, if we want to go further, the next single we did was, of course, a fairly famous one now, which is called Most People Know Think I'm Crazy. That was recorded at TTS Studios, which is the back of Channel 9 in those days. And we double-tracked the beginning of it. I double-tracked the acoustic guitar that Billy played. And there's in the middle breakdown, there's a sound that sounds like some sort of strings or something in the middle before I do the drum, the little drum pad.
Yeah.
It's not. Actually, what it is, and once again, you know, should never let me loose in the studio. But what it is, it's Billy's guitar feeding back in 3-part harmony. In other words, so we recorded Billy's guitar feeding back on 3 different tracks. So, you know, you have what we call a triad. It's the first, the third, and the fifth chord. So it's a chord. So it's 3 different notes of feedback reversed. That's what that is.
Yeah.
And it's quite unique. Well, you know, it's one of those things that looking for something that's a bit unusual to put in the middle, make it interesting, and so that's what I did at that stage.
Yeah.
Billy liked it. I thought, this is pretty good. Sounds great. So let's leave it as it is, you know.
Yeah, you mentioned the acoustic guitar was double-tracked, and I know of like vocal double-tracks, that means just the person sings it again. I mean, was that the same with guitar? Did he play it twice, or did you like get to like?
Yeah, the acoustics played twice. It's just double record. It's recorded twice on 2 different probably 4 tracks because it was stereo. I think we had a 24-track Ampex by that stage at TCS. So the guitar is double-tracked. The vocals aren't. The vocals are just plain. But the middle bit with the guitars and the drum fill and stuff is, like I said, it's 3 guitars in harmony, and the tape was reversed when we did it, you know.
Like when you did that second acoustic guitar track, had he made a mistake, would you have been able to do it again? I mean, could you been able to erase it, or how would that have worked back then? Had he made
Well, you need. If you make a mistake, you go and do it again. I mean, the thing is with that thing, the very start of it is not a chord. It's more of a ga-duck-ga-ja, and then the chord comes in. So it's like 1, 2, 3, ga-duck-ga. So the first part of the guitar thing is actually one guitar. The second guitar comes in straight after that. So his guide to do it was that ga-duck-ja, you know, the first little crotchet triplet thing he did on the guitar to start the first chord. So we didn't have a click track. We didn't need click tracks. I mean, they were available, but, you know, I hated them then, and I still hate them. I mean, you know, if it's good enough for Steely Dan not to use click tracks, it's good enough for anyone else, you know, as far as I'm concerned. So we didn't use any click tracks. We just did it. Tempo's pretty good. Doesn't move around too much. Click tracks are sort of like, I mean, you've heard of click tracks, haven't you? People
yeah.
I mean, they use them these days because they record something in the studio. The guy takes away the file, records it at home in his garage, brings it back. So they have this sort of sync track, which they use and it's actually a click track, so they can all stay in time. And that's where things are these days. We didn't have that. We didn't want that stuff. We just wanted to play the studio like a band, you know, as close as we could to playing on stage that's what we wanted.
I mean, you mentioned that guitar solo, that effect you got on Billy's guitar solo, and I was kind of thinking, like, did Billy do that solo live with the band as like you were all playing, or like did he?
No.
Overdub. Yep. Okay.
No, he did an overdub with the solo. However, the classic is that Billy, in the studio, he had his guitar into a Fender twin amp, slaved into a Crown DC 300 power amp, running 16, 15 JBLs. So 16, 15-inch JBLs he had in the studio. And I'm trying to mic this monster of a guitar amp, basically with one microphone. And, you know, in the studio where we're recording this, we've only got like 115 aside for the studio monitors, you know. But Billy comes in after doing the solo and says, it doesn't sound as big in here, does it? And I said, I wonder why, Billy. Yeah, we had lots of moments like that, you know, like just that classic stuff. You know, he's playing a guitar solo in the studio with 16, 15-inch JBLs flat out like at a gig, and I'm trying to record it in a studio with only, you know, 2 15s of stereo, you know. Quite classic stuff. Classic Thorpe stuff, you know.
The Dawn song was on an 8-track, and this was on a 24-track or maybe a 16-track or something like that. I mean, would you guys have been able to do, most people I know, on an 8-track and still get that same sound, or like was it just like
probably. I mean, we would have had to make a few shortcuts, like maybe bounce back the drummers down to 2 tracks or something, rather than using 8 for them, stuff like that, you know. But yeah, probably. But having a, you know, 16 to 20, I can't remember if it was. They did have a 24 Ampex, and they had a 16 track Optronics. I can't remember which one it was, but anyway, you just do what you got to do. You work with what you got given, you know, basically, and you do the best you can. That was my whole thing. But you got to realise that the thing about the Aztecs is that there wasn't anyone around to really tell the band what to do, because Billy would not stand for it. The band was basically, we're the Aztecs and we'll do what we want. If we want to take a week to record this, we will. Don't hassle us about getting it done quickly and time is money, and we don't want to hear that rubbish, you know. We will do what we want to do. And the band had a real rebellious thing about it, which was, you know, led by our leader, our illustrious leader, Billy. You know, he wouldn't take any crap from anyone, you know. So, I mean, I can remember gigs we did where someone had sort of turned the lights out because we were too loud, and he'd just get the crowd chanting, almost cause a riot, and turn the volume up. You know, it was just, you never want to mess with Billy, I'm telling you, especially in front of a crowd, you know. It was a real experience for someone like myself who had, you know, played guitar and played drums in more of a cabaret type setting. You know, I used to play places like 10th Avenue, Winston Charles, and, you know, you'd have to dress neatly and you'd back someone on the floor show like Olivia Newton-John or Ernie and Denise or whoever, you know, to joining the Aztecs, which was this jeans and T-shirt, drinking on stage, not taking any crap from anyone, playing as loud as they possibly could. It was a complete change of what I was used to. And to tell you the truth, I really joined the Aztecs because I was doing lots of other stuff when I joined the Aztecs. I was playing, you know, I'd been playing with Grantley D. I was doing studio stuff, writing jingles, engineering ads in the studio. I mean, we used to do ads for Calder Raceway, and I'd have to cut them up and, you know, edit them and all that sort of stuff, which is what you did back in those days. There was no digital Pro Tools or anything, you know. And then I joined this band, which was just this sort of out of control volume and rebellious attitude, you know. And I actually joined the band thinking, well, you know, this will do me for 6 months and I'll go somewhere else. But man, the night when we did the Melbourne Town Hall concert, which we recorded, we took the 8-track and it was sitting beside the stage at the Melbourne Town Hall, and we put one mic in each channel, no desks, no nothing. And in those days, you had a mic for the PA and you had the mic that going in the tape recorder, gaffer taped around the other mic. So every mic had 2 mics, you know, and that was recorded on an 8-track. The 8-track was sitting at the side of the stage. And it was a big unit. It was like nearly 2 meters high, this machine, you know.
Yeah.
But the night we did that show, And Daddy Cool supported us that night. And I think Madlake were on the show. I think Spectrum on the show. I mean, the line of people down Swanston Street was like the Beatles. It was incredible. I remember arriving, and the lines like right down across Flinders Street, down Swanston Street, you know. Geez, this band's got a lot of legs here, Matthews. Maybe you picked the winner for a change, you know. So I stayed, and I worked with Billy all over the world, you know, basically.
Do you remember how that Sunbury album was recorded, the live one in 1972? Like, do you recall how?
Yeah, it was recorded on an OB van, like an outside broadcast van, owned by TCS Studios, and it was a 16-track. I didn't have a lot with the actual recording of it. That was done by John French, good friend of mine, but I did all the mixing of it and cleaning up anything that needed to be done. You know, I think we, when I listened to Most People Know Think I'm Crazy, the harmonies are really fantastic. I think we probably redid the harmonies in the studio for the live stuff, you know. But the rest of it was live.
I was actually going to ask you about that. Like, did you do any stuff in the studio? Because I spoke to someone who played at the Woodstock Festival in America in '69, and they said that entire album was pretty much re-recorded. So I was going to ask you about whether that was the same for Sunbury 1972. So that's interesting to me that you mentioned that. But
well, we the record companies really didn't spend lots of money on the albums. You know, it's not like America. America's a completely different thing altogether.
Yeah.
You know, massive market, 300 million people. I mean, you have a gold record in America, it's 1 million copies sold. You know, a gold record in Australia was 50,000. I mean, it was, you know, it's just a completely different thing. So they had the money to do stuff like that. I mean, we really didn't, you know. So, and we didn't want to take away the performance. I mean, I listened to that Sunbury live at Sunbury thing, and to me, it just hasn't dated. It's still fantastic, you know.
Yeah.
It's a real rock and roll band. Turn it up loud.
Yeah.
You know, get with the vibe.
Yeah.
You know, I love it. Compared with some of the stuff that we did in the 80s in America, which, you know, was a different era. Everything's digital. Everyone's using plugins in the studio, blah, blah, blah. That stuff to me is dated badly. You know, I cringe a bit when I hear it. But when I listen to Sunbury or our album More Arse Then Class, it's still mighty to me, you know.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, you know, you've got to remember, at the time, most Australian musicians would have been listening to English and American stuff, probably mostly English. I mean, England had that real thing going, you know, like the King Crimsons, End of the Beatles, Yes, Jethro Tull, early Elton John, you know, Hendrix came into it. I mean, the music was incredible, and we were all in Australia playing in bands and recording and trying to get sounds like they were getting in England, you know, those great studio sounds. But we couldn't really do it because we didn't have the financial backing of the record companies to do it. So we all looked towards overseas for us to improve what we're doing, whether it be playing, producing, engineering, whatever. You know, we listened to a lot of stuff, and they were so far in front of us back in the early 70s, it just wasn't funny, you know. But, you know, what's interesting is that years later, when I was remastering Most People Know Think I'm Crazy, and we're now talking 40 years later, I'm mastering this album, which I haven't heard for 40 years. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, this stuff isn't too bad at all. What the hell are we talking about? And when I was mastering Mandel Lake and Spectrum, I mean, those albums were fantastic by those guys. All that whole Australian thing that was going on in the early 70s, Carver Stewart, Sid Rumpo, you know, Spectrum, all that stuff. It was a fantastic era and really uniquely Australian. And you know, if you listen to Mandel Lake or Spectrum or even Aztecs or Bobby Lloyd, there's no mistaking who they are because they're not like anybody else.
The Sunbury Pop Festival, I mean, what was it like?
Well, it is Australia's Woodstock because, you know, Australia was only, 25 million people. America was probably close to 300 million. They got 250,000 at Woodstock, and we got 35,000 at Sunbury. But, you know, we've got 35,000 people who pitched tents, brought their kids, brought their dogs, sat in the dust and the sun, and listen to music for 3 days. So it was our Woodstock. In a way, it was our Woodstock. We'd already had pop festivals. We had one called Wallachia. I think it was 1970. We had another one called Arumba. I don't know how you pronounce it. Arimba. Launching Place was another one. So we'd had many ones. But Sunbury was like the top of the tree. It was the big one. People came from all over Australia to sit in the sun and the mud. Not mud. There was no mud, sorry. Just the sun. I'm thinking of the fourth Sunbury. There was mud. But the first Sunbury, 1972, there was no mud. There was just dust, kids and dogs and people smoking dope all over the place. Diving in the creek, out of the trees, girls topless, some naked. I mean, it was just one of those things of the younger generation just let their head out and wanted to go and hear music, rock and roll and boogie and blues for 3 days. And if you think about that, you can understand why by the time we got to 1974 and Queen decided to come here and play in their satin pants and bright coloured shirts and doing stuff that no one had ever heard of, they got booed off stage because people wanted to hear what they've been used to hearing for the previous 2 years, which is loud rock and roll, boogie and blues. And Queen didn't fit that bill at all. That's what happened with Queen, And I remember the chant that went on after Queen. Queen basically got booed off stage, and all the people screaming, "We want Thorpe, we want Thorpe." That was all they got, That's all Queen got. It's a bit hard to explain it, but even the Aztecs were so big as a band. Honestly, we could get up the stage and just fart, and they'd clap for more. It was just incredible. Talk about getting away with murder, man. That was the Aztecs. Just bizarre stuff took place everywhere. It was incredible. I always tell the story of the night we were recording the album More Arse Then Class, which we recorded in 1973 at Armstrong Studios. And the Kirov Ballet decided that they wanted to come and see a Western recording studio because they'd never been to a Western recording studio. So the Kirov Ballet, with 2 KGB guys, come into Armstrong's, just happened to pick the night that the Aztecs are doing overdubs on the More Arse Then Class. So they come, and there's 5 ballerinas and the head ballerina and 2 KGB guys, right?
Yeah.
Billy goes up to the head ballerina and says, "You want vodka? Vodka?" She said, "No, brandy." And we had an account across the road of the pub. So we got scotch and brandy and God knows what. We got it all brought back to the studio. In the end of the night, mate, the 2 KGB guys are stoned and out of their brains, drunk on the floor in the booth because Billy's giving them joints and everything else. They're totally off their trees on the ground. Pig and I, Warren Morgan and I, are pirouetting across the studio with the head ballerina of the Kirov Ballet all pissed, stoned out of our brains. I mean, I wish I had a film crew. It was just one of those Aztec moments. It was incredible.
That album, the Live at Sunbury, was the first one that you released on Aztec Music, on Aztec Records. Am I right on that?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. On my label. Yes, it was also the first album done on the Havoc label as well.
Oh, right.
Originally in 1972. It was a double album. It had a fold-out a tent. It came with a fold-out tent with cartoon drawings of the band, which you pulled out and put inside the tent. It was quite, it was Billy sort of wanting to be a little bit different. Billy was always wanting to be different. But that was the first Havoc album, and that was the first CD I did on the Aztec label in, I think, maybe 2002 or something like that.
Yeah. Did you get a hold of the master tapes again to like remaster them or like remix them when you did that reissue?
Well, I already had the master tapes because I mixed it and I was the producer of Havoc, so I had all the master tapes because Havoc went into liquidation, went broke a few years down the line, and I got to keep all that stuff, I kept it all, and so yes, I had the master tapes and I kept them, and lucky I did, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Did you do anything differently to, like, in terms of the mixing on that reissue, like to what you didn't do in the original release?
No. Well, look, I'll tell you the story. The Melbourne Town Hall concert has a drum solo as part of the LP, the original LP.
Yep.
And the reason for the drum solo is because the power went out.
Okay.
The power went out at the show. This is Melbourne Town Hall. So usually what happened is the power went out, I'd finish up doing a drum solo. Be like, okay, it's your turn, and off I'd go. And when Billy, and there's a lot of mucking around and stuff going on in that album. And Billy said to me when I put it out, he said, "Oh, can we cut out this and we cut out that?" And I said, "No, we're not. We're not doing anything. This is warts and all because the people who will buy this are the collectors and the fans of the Aztecs, and they want to hear it the way it was on the original without stuff being cut out, So Aztec as a label has never cut anything out of any of the albums. In fact, we've put stuff back. When we released Lock Up Your Mothers, the triple box set on Mushroom Records.
Yep.
Now, Festival Records, who owned the master tapes, sent them to Billy, and Billy edited a 24-minute track, which is called Gangster Love, edited it down to 12 minutes and threw away all the part, which includes a drum solo from the drummer that was in the band in that time period. Excuse me, because I hadn't joined by then. That's like the first Aztec album featuring Lobby Lloyd, Billy Thorpe, Warren Morgan, and Paul Wheeler and Kevin Murphy, the drummer, who later left. But Billy cut out, like 12 minutes of the damn song. So I had to go to the vinyl version because there's no master tapes exist of the 12 minutes that are missing now. Go to the vinyl and master the vinyl to match the digital files they now have, which came from original master tapes, to put back the 12 minutes that was taken out, And the other thing which was a real problematic, also in Gangster Love, they beeped out one of Billy's words. If you ever listen to the CD version, the old CD version, or the vinyl of The Hoax Is Over, which is Billy, Pig, and Lobby Lloyd, they beeped out Billy's word screwed. He used the word screwed.
Yeah.
Something about the sheriff's wife's on the back of the horse, and there's 24 girls, and I screwed them all on the way out. Anyway, they beeped out the word screwed.
Yeah, right, yeah.
On everything, even on the cassettes. So there is no master tape of the original vocal using the word screwed. It doesn't exist.
Wow. Yeah.
So I had to grab the word screwed from one of our live performances of Gangster Love and dump it into where the beat was on The Hoax Is Over. Now, it's not perfect because one's live, one's 20 years later or 40 years later, and it's not exactly the same, but at least the word's there,
Yep.
So that's what Aztec Records does. When it releases stuff, it releases the stuff as it originally was, without warts and all. In fact, all the Aztec releases, 95% of the releases have bonus and extra tracks.
Yeah.
That you can't put on the record, because a record you can basically only get 45 minutes on a record, and a CD you can get 80 minutes on it. So you can put lots of bonus tracks on a CD.
Yeah.
So Aztec always added bonus tracks.
Yeah, it sounds like everything you guys do at Aztec Records is quality and is just just amazing. For it to describe it in one word, I think amazing would be a great description for Aztec Records.
Well, look, it is a unique situation. You have the owner of the company who was around in the 70s, who knows all these people, and they know him, which is me. You have a dedicated analog mastering studio that can take on anything and master it. You have a record company that's totally Australian. Everything is done in Australia. No money leaves the country. It's all done in Australia. And it's distributed by the record company as well. So there's no middlemen. There's no national multi-billion-dollar companies like Sony or Warner involved. It's a one-man show. Everything is remastered properly. The Go box set, which is 130 tracks, took me 3 months of mastering. So the question is, who's going to pay for 3 months of someone to master 130 tracks? And the answer is no one.
Yep.
No record company is going to pay for that except somebody who owns a record company and has a studio to be able to do it and can do it as a hobby in his spare time, mainly me. You know?
Yes, yeah.
You know, I mean, I take pride in my. I think I'd probably have to say most people are amazed that I still have my hearing, seeing that I played in the loudest rock and roll band ever known in this country for about 20 years. But apparently, for some miracle, I still have my hearing, which is really good still, you know.
Yeah. In saying that too, Gil, I mean, what's next for you? Have you got any other projects?
Well, I play in two bands at the moment. I play guitar in Normie Rowe's band. We just did 2 gigs at the weekend, which was Normie and Denise Drysdale together in Melbourne. And I play drums in a band called the Marty Rose Band, which has Pip Joyce, who plays with Glenn Sharrock and Wilbur Wilde when he's not playing in the Marty Rose Band. Joe Imbrol, who played bass with Brian Cadd and Ian Moss. Me, who's just an old band mole, I play with everyone. and Marty Rose, who really not many people know, but he looks like Paul McCartney and he can sing really well as well. We do a lot of Beatles stuff too, and we do it really well. You know, we're sort of a musician's band who wants to do everything as close as possible to the original record. So, you know, I mean, we do things like Live and Let Die by McCartney as good as McCartney's band, I'm telling you, you know.
Yeah.
Note for note, you know, and the harmonies and everything else. So I play drums in that band. I've got 2 gigs this weekend. I've got Saturday with Normie at, where is it? Eagle Ridge Golf Club in Boneo in Victoria, which is near Rosebud. And Sunday afternoon at Musicland in Faulkner with the Marty Rose Band.
And I have to thank you for making the time today out of what, you know, is a very busy schedule. Just thanks so much for making the time to talk to me.
That's okay. Good on you, Jack.
That was drummer of Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs, Gil Matthews. Gil has founded a music label called Aztec Records, which features fantastic reissues of vintage Australian albums. Check it out at aztecrecords.com.au. Remember to share this show with other music fans. And if you really enjoyed this edition, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Vinyl Vibes. And to all you music lovers out there, stay groovy.